Hello, welcome to Swatches Art Challenge live stream number 98. We're joined again by Nito. Welcome, Nito.
Oh, hello. Am I unmuted?
You are unmuted. Everybody can hear you.
Yes. Hello, everyone. I hope you don't mind me being here for one more week.
No, it's good to have you. Anna is still traveling, and although she had a location with good internet, there was a lot of noise and friends in the background. So just for audio clarity, we're having Nito join us, and I really appreciate your input that you gave last time. So it's good to have you again. As I mentioned in some of the comments about the live stream today, I'm a little pressed for time this afternoon, so I'm going to be moving through things a little quicker. So let's run through these announcements, and we'll go ahead and jump right into the reviews of the artwork. First, we have, of course, Nito, if you want to go check out her artwork, example by one of the little images here. There's a link for you. Now, we're going to be looking at the Books and Binding Art Challenge submissions right now from Group 1. And these are their concepts and sketches. Now, if you actually want to join for Group 2, which will be next Friday, there still remains 4 tickets available. You can go pick up the ticket at gumroad.com/swatches. You will have 1 week. If you're starting right now, you'll have 1 week to get it in rather than the 2 weeks. All right. But if you do want to jump into this challenge, you get a review next week, and then the 2 weeks following on that with your final, you can go pick up a ticket. If you've got questions on that, a lot of people in the chat know the answers to the art challenge, how it works, all that sort of stuff. Feel free to toss your questions down there in the chat. Somebody will help you out. But if you also have a comment or question that you want to address to me or Nito, try to drop that in the chat. She's going to be keeping an eye on that for me and trying to pass those along to me during the course of the episode. Okay, next week, as I said, we will be reviewing the Books and Binding Challenge again, but it will be the concepts from Group 2. Each group has 12 artists in it. All right. Also, next week, as every Wednesday now, we have another stream on Wednesdays, but it is only for channel members that are on the Super Swatcher or higher, which is $5 a month or higher. You get to submit your artwork for the lottery paintover. We do 3 paintovers on a 2-hour live stream on Wednesdays. We're only getting like 10 or so entries per paintover episode. So you actually have a pretty good chance of getting a paintover if you submit your stuff in. You get like a 1 in 3, 1 in 4 chance. And I always forget to tell people this, so I actually wrote a comment here to remind me. That is, please like, comment, and share if you enjoy the channel and if you enjoy the content and the feedback. If you found it helpful in the past, please like, comment, and share. It makes a massive difference to YouTube. And Nito, you gave me the reminder. If you want to join as a member on the channel, you need to do that through a desktop computer. YouTube does not currently have it set up so that you can do that through mobile or app. Or even you tried it on a device, a pad or something, didn't you? And you couldn't do it?
Yeah, I tried it on the app, and then I also tried it on like the Google Chrome on my iPad. It worked. It might work for other people as well. So try it out if you need to. Just go on your device, but not on the app, on the browser. And it
Yes.
may work for you. Otherwise, just borrow somebody's computer and do it from there. It's worth it. So I recommend it.
Yeah, it's a pretty chill stream. It's a little less educational. We just kind of have fun with it. And yeah, I should have pulled up an example from last time, but I didn't. And we can go take a look at it. Swatches. So last stream, like we did this paint over Olivia's piece of the character Keyleth from Critical Role. And so, like, that's what we pulled up right here. And then we did a paint over. It was about a 40-minute paint over or so as we were chatting and did that. So that's kind of what we do on the paint over streams. And it's just fun to hang out and chat and play with some of the ideas. And it's also more about me kind of doing whatever I would be interested in doing with it. I don't always exactly follow the original concept. I kind of have a little fun with it. So, okay. Well, that is an idea of that if you've not joined in. And also, patrons at the $20 and $40 levels over on patreon.com/swatches, they get a copy of all of the paint over streams that they can go watch in the video library. Which I think I'm an episode or two behind. But anyway, those are getting put up there as well. Okay, let's take a look at our entries for this time. We're going to start just alphabetically. Anna Maria is up first. So let's pull these up. All right, the challenge, if you're just joining the challenge, they had a choice between two different Magic the Gathering inspired scenes. Now, these are following the same visual format, size ratio. The general sort of feeling and artistic approach that you would have in Magic the Gathering. And these are spell cards. They're like what you consider an action card. And it's not really featuring a specific character or location. It's more about in an event that you cause to take place. In this case, there was one of two. This one is the binding, astral binding, where astral, that is like magical chains are being summoned to bind down a powerful Minotaur character. The other option to do was a carnivorous library, where these books come out of the library to attack people that come into the library who were not authorized to be there. Most of the entries were the Minotaur. We had, two? Nito, that were the library, and I think the rest were the Minotaur.
Yes, I believe so. But that doesn't mean either one is better or worse. So if you're going for group 2, go with what you want to. Don't feel pressured.
No, and that's why I do it, because certain people have, interest more one way or the other. Maybe you wanted to work on your creatures. Maybe you wanted to do an indoor versus outdoor. And that's why we switched it up a while back to usually giving 2 or 3 options about what the challenge is about. All right, so let's jump into it. This one, Anna Maria, this is not even halfway there. But, I mean, it's still in the concept stage, but that's fine. Still wondering which of the value studies to go with. Color-wise, I like to go for orange, red, blue, purple direction. Now, the chains need to be blue or green or somewhere in the middle, so that's what they're doing here. I'm supposing that they're just indicating the chains with lines and not actually drawing the chains yet, but that will need to be implemented as proper chains, chain links coming up and not just lines. I assume that they're going to do that. Value-wise, did you ever take a look at this, and do you have a preference on which one you think works well, values?
Personally, just thinking about just those 3 that I believe Anna is Hobbit, and she's in the chat. Anyway, thinking of these ones, my first thought was to go with Value Study 2, but hear me out. I think it is better because the value contrast is not so much in the character, more in the chains themselves. So it puts a little bit more emphasis on the action of the chains going up, since they're lighter than anything else on the picture. So, but yeah, that being said, it could be, I don't know, it could be Value Study 3 as well, just because of that spotlight on the back of the head. But then again, on that one, it doesn't give that much emphasis on the chains themselves.
Yeah. I think that's a great observation. That is exactly one of the things that I would be thinking about as well, which is we've got to make sure that these chains are really the focal point. Because if you can't understand the action that's taking place, because it's not about the Minotaur, it's about how the chains are interacting with the Minotaur. And We'll talk about that more on another one, that examples where you can get that wrong. I think this one actually has a really good balance of making it about the scene and not just the character. One of the reason it works well on this one is because we're actually seeing the back of a character. And generally, if you have a good face shot where the face is towards you and you can get all that, it's much easier for it to be read as being about the character. But if you turn that character so that the face is in shadow or they're looking a different direction, then you just instinctively read it as them being not the focal point, being about the scene. I think probably a mix between some of these is actually good. I sort of like the storm clouds just because it ratchets up the tension. But I also would like to see maybe a little more light behind that face. I like the way that the chains show up against the darker background there. So value-wise, I kind of like the idea of maybe just having like a break in some of the clouds around the face just so that silhouette reads well. Or basically having this sort of scenario, but having a patch of light coming down on the top of these. And you don't necessarily need to explain where that light's coming from. It could just be a break in the clouds and some light, or there's a lightning blast, off scene. But either way, if you put a little light there or put light behind the head, just for that to pop out, and then probably going with this. But color-wise, make sure that the background is kept a little more neutral in saturation so that the blue chains actually have the most vibrancy because they're magic and they need to read really well. So all of this, you want to make sure that you don't have any whites back here unless maybe you have a strike of lightning that can be brighter. But everything else back here could probably just be toned down and be pushed towards neutral. And then the chains can be a lot more saturated than everything else. Okay, that said, I want to run through a couple of pose things real quick. I think the overall pose, I get a good feeling of it. Seems like a powerful creature, but I want to push it a little bit more. I made some adjustments beforehand. I start by tilting him back. Let's look at this. So this is a quick drawing I did earlier. I'm just trying to spread those feet out. If I can bend the knee more, it feels like he's under more strain. I want to just kind of compress him down. His upper back is pulled back more. His arms are straining more, also making his arms more beefy and getting those knees to bend more. So I wanted to implement those. So I bent him back a little bit, letting that leg kick out more so that you can see that leg is under more strain. Same thing with the other leg, kind of compressing it up a little bit. Then this would be doing a little repose. So to him just looking forwards, letting him be more like he's hollering. He's like, ah! His head's lifted up. He's opening his chest up so that he can have a louder bellow. And then just shifting the whole thing down a little bit since we tilted his head up. He's a little too close to the top of the frame. So that would be the kind of difference I'd be looking for right there. Little change there on the arm. It's coming towards us a little more, so I'm going to make it a little more beefy. Keep that nice round curve there to the arm. Also made a little anatomy change. Let me get to this layer. Made that shoulder overlap more, letting the back of that really kick out. And you can have these. I really love the shapes that you're going with right now. I'm just kicking them up a notch, letting them be even a little more powerful. All right, so doing that sort of thing. And let's get some sort of clothes on him. And it doesn't need to be anything fancy, but go take a look at what some of the attire would be for a kind of a generic character in MTG. Just give him some sort of garb. It can be fairly tight fitting if you want. Just put some straps on him and some sort of little tunic thing. But yeah, we want to make him look like he's a warrior. He is, Minotaurs are civilized creatures, so let's make sure that that's reading across. Okay, next up, we're going to be taking a look at Kong Lee. Hopefully, I'm saying that right. I don't know if there's a pronunciation on that. Do you know, Nito? Do you know what the proper
Uh,
pronunciation is?
I mean, in the server, we'll just call them Kong.
Kong. Okay.
So yeah, I'd assume that's correct. Sorry if it's not.
No, it'll work for now. It says, this is a really fun challenge. I took it as an opportunity to learn how to mix figures with more elongated environment. What is detracting the most from this piece is in terms of composition. I'm concerned about legibility in general, but I've been looking at this piece for too long to really self-critique. Okay, well, that's really what this challenge is about. It's about getting some feedback and just, whenever you hit that first wall or hurdle, and getting some ideas how to go against it. I think that the composition is the biggest thing that we need to focus on right now. And until you really get a composition you're really happy with, don't worry about the lighting, values, and the colors. And if you're not being able to step through it at the pace that you have the time and the schedule of the challenge, don't worry about having to get it finished in the next 2 weeks. I'd rather see a really good composition and simple value scheme than the whole thing be detailed with colors. What was your initial read on this, and what is some of your thoughts about maybe how to address having a more compelling, better read to the composition?
Yeah, I was seeing Kong stream it while he was working on it, but I can see the struggle in this one.
Mm-hmm.
My first impression, my idea would be that since this is again like the other one was about the action and the chains, this is about the books and how they're attacking somebody.
Exactly.
So I think right now, just and I think this could also help the composition is thinking about more of the books and what do they do, how do they move, what are they made out of, and perhaps thinking a little bit more about designing them,
Mm-hmm.
making them feel like my tip here would be like think of the books as a character. Um,
Mm-hmm.
they are a character, perhaps all of them together, not forming a character, but they are sort of driving the narrative here. So maybe making them feel a little bit more ornate, maybe put some monster aspects into their design,
Mm-hmm.
and then just generally highlighting them more in the composition by having them take center stage, if you could
Yeah.
say it that way, and just emphasizing them more within the composition, having them be larger, perhaps more of them in the foreground. I don't know. I would love to hear what you think about it, Clint.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. This one really comes back to determining exactly what this image is about. And it is about the interaction of the books and the man. The library slash study location is secondary to everything else. And you really don't need much context around the character to get that idea. I mean, you put like one bookcase behind them, and you're probably good as far as. And like, even like this reference image over here, most of the image is this table and the book sitting there. And there's just a bookcase back there, and you're going, okay, yeah, I know the sort of location we're in. Same thing here. I think we're getting too much information about all of this out here that really isn't telling us about this interaction. And when a character, as a player, would play this card, they want to see the excitement of what the books are doing and how that's affecting the person. So I just copied this area because this area right here essentially is telling us everything that we need to know. And I would be saying always focus on filling the frame with the content. In this case, the content isn't just a person, it's the person interacting with these things. So now the background's completely at the wrong angle and stuff when we turn it like that. But you realize that just by doing that, we've essentially eliminated most of the stuff that didn't need to be there. What we really care about is how he is trying to protect himself or run from these things, and they're much bigger in frame. And like you said, Nito, is there something that we can do to give a little more personality to them? These are magically animated. It's not like you need to put eyeballs on them or anything, but can we get the paper to move in a way that it's almost like the paper is reaching out? Can it be forming some sort of, I don't know, behavior to it? Or could the books be working together somehow? Can we get some extra pages flying out of it to kind of help to give the idea that it's moving and that it's almost tearing itself apart and there's pieces of paper and cloth, kind of flying out from its mouth? Can they be trailing? Can there be letters or words trailing out of the inside? I don't know. It's magic. But giving them a little more personality that way. So let's try to focus way more onto the character. I'm actually not even against this image over here, this reference. I think that could actually work pretty well with him down on the ground like that. And you do this sort of thing, not with the cross line on it, but you do something like that, and then you have the books coming in here at the guy. And that could work really well too. Something like that. And maybe there's some sort of monster big book in the background. And it's almost like it's it's trying to swallow him whole, right? This monster book. And maybe there's even books inside of it that form almost like teeth. We're just trying to have a little fun with it. This one is supposed to be a little more fun, a little more humorous. So something like that could really work as well. If you're wanting to move away from that idea. But that would be most of the feedback. Let's get rid of a lot of the space that's not telling us that direct interaction. Get a better view of his expression, and also check his angle. Like here, this pose is just kind of a crazy pose, and I don't see any direct reference for that. This one's a little too far away. And that this pose is just kind of odd. It's not like he's actually protecting himself, but I don't really feel like he's falling either. So we want to work with that so that he's either fighting them or blocking them or trying to pull one off of him. Something on that lines.
Clint, Kong has a question in the chat, and he says, so Swatches, would you say to work with the first thumbnail I had or try to improve the main piece that he already has?
If it was me, I think you're probably going to have an easier time having a more successful image with that first one. But in the same way that I kind of showed it down here, if you do this first one, I'll zoom up on it, we can go ahead and just cut out a lot. You're way too zoomed out on this one. So, like I said, you don't need to see much background for that to be understood. And let's really get maybe even some of the books up here in the foreground. I kind of like this one, like maybe there's a book right here coming to him from the front. And then they can all be flying towards him. And we just want, a lot of these guys, just a swarm of them, almost like seagulls flocking, to get food or something. They're all coming at him. And, yeah, I mean, if it was me, that's what I'd suggest. Okay, let's go ahead and move on. Up next is Hishram. Hopefully they will let me know if there's a different pronunciation of that. My mouse disappeared. My Okay, my pad just decided to...
Oh no.
It will only move my mouse when I'm touching it. Of course, because I've never had that problem before, ever.
It's the nature of technology. Also, Hisham is also in the chat, and they say it's pronounced Hisham.
Hisham. Okay,
So
I'll
like
try to keep that in mind.
Yes. I hope I'm reading it correctly. If not, I'm so sorry.
Oh, I bet the computer is getting hot. Let me turn my AC on.
Yes. Also, Penslinger, I see you in the chat saying, I didn't see my piece in the list. You might have missed out on the time to send it. If it's not, I mean, I'll tell Clint as soon as he's back. Don't worry about it.
Okay, here we go. You might be getting a little background hum from that, but I don't think it'll be too bad.
Yeah, it's not too bad. Just before we continue, Penslinger, I am not sure what their name is on the challenge, but they're saying that they don't see their piece in the list, so they
Was
might
it
have.
uploaded by noon? Because
They say I sent it 2 hours before the deadline. Daniel Decena or Decina. We will see.
I don't have that on my list. Hang on.
Oh yeah, because there's always 12 entries, and today there was
That's not the right
11
one.
entries. So that might be the missing piece.
Did he upload it to the wrong upload?
You might have. I'm not so sure, Daniel.
Let me pull it up.
Daniel says I sent it 2 hours before the deadline. They might have had a wrong link, perhaps. But yeah. Sorry about that. I just thought I'd mention it
No,
since
I'll
it's in
check
the
real
chat.
quick here. If
Okay.
he sent it in, let's see, but it's fine. Yeah, he uploaded it to the finals instead of the concepts folder, and I didn't look in there to see if there was anything. Let me go ahead and just download it, and
Okay.
I won't have anything prepared for it, so it'll be just off the
Yeah,
cuff. But yeah,
it's unfortunate, but at least it's something.
yeah. No, I'm glad he mentioned it. I wouldn't have looked in there. Let's downloads. Okay, well, we'll get to that after this one. I guess we'll go back to it.
Yeah, Michael says in the chat, these things happen, and it's true.
Yes, they
Just
do.
the nature of technology and files and having to upload things. Thanks for letting us know, though.
Yes.
If you hadn't said anything in the chat, it would have been
No, it's a good
worse.
reminder. There are two links, one for the concept upload and one for the finals, the two different folders. And so yeah, just make sure that you're uploading it to the right one. All right, so this is Hisham says this is my first challenge. Hey, welcome. Great to have new challengers join in.
Awesome.
And I'm excited to be part of it. In what ways can I make the composition more interesting or better in general? Thanks for the opportunity. Well, the first thing obviously that stands out to me is that we've got a Musatar, which I guess I've never even thought of being a thing. But why not, right? Why not? This
Yeah.
must be the Canadian theme plane of Magic, where it's just poutine and maple syrup everywhere. And we've got Musatar. Yeah. Seriously, I'm okay with it. It's kind of fun. And I'm sure at some point, Magic is going to just keep expounding out. I mean, if we can have owl bears, we could probably have Musatars. So, my gut reaction to the concept is good. I'm getting a pretty good read of the ideas coming across. I feel like he's being grappled. I feel like he's trying to fight against that. I get the definite feeling that these are magical chains. But some of the lighting and just the refinement of the concept needs to come about. As far as the character, the pose, and the composition, what's your thoughts there? I'll talk a little bit about the lighting, but where are you on some of those other things?
Well, about composition, my idea could have been to, and this is a little bit, you would have to redo some stuff, so perhaps just just keep it in mind. I think that the idea that you have of these chains coming out of this like magical circle at the bottom,
Mm-hmm.
you could really expand on that by having the camera looking down at the scene a little bit more, so that you could really get a sense of that magic circle sort of all encompassing this character. And
Mm-hmm.
then you could really show the chains coming from all directions. Really, that could work a lot in terms of also the story, just because of the nature of a down shot, like you're looking down at him
Mm-hmm.
and he's looking up, like he's reaching, he really wants to get out, he's struggling. I think that could show the struggle sense a little bit more. um Other than that, yeah, it's just you could then play up a lot more with the composition in terms of this circle and these radiating lines going to the middle character.
Yeah.
That could be something you could explore.
Yeah, I'm sort of stuck, yeah, between that option and the other option, which is right now it feels like it's in between. It's not really being the low shot looking up at the character, and it's also not the shot you're talking about, which is higher and sort of looking down on it.
Yes,
And
having a
I
down shot.
think, Hisham, that either one of those is going to be ultimately a little stronger than this one right here, which is sort of in between. So my thought is either we go ahead and just put the horizon line really low and we're looking up at this fellow, and you basically get rid of the idea of the circle because it's going to be so low it doesn't really matter, and you're just focusing on the action of the chains. Or we do what Nito's talking about and we change that perspective so that we've got more of kind of this angle to it, and we've got the chains like coming out from the outside of the ring, right? And they're coming down like, something like that. And that might be an easier change for you to make. You would need a different perspective of the character, but keep with the same, I think, the basic pose, and the lighting of the way the chains are coming up. I think that still works. Now, I'm not going to answer which one's best. I think they're both completely workable, so I'll leave that up to you which one follows. It actually does remind me a little bit of Full Metal Alchemist, when the brothers
Oh.
have the forbidden circle of trying to raise the dead, and all the black hands come out to grab them. And that's almost what's going on here, right?
Yeah, no way. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That could be good to reference as well, just for extra inspiration.
Yeah, yeah. The transmutation circle. That's what they call it. Okay. Now, as far as some of the rest of it, let's rework him a little bit. I'm really expecting him to have more neck. Like, even on this one, you see the amount of neck on this Musatar character in your reference. And right now, it feels like his jaw is like literally down onto his collarbone. So we need to let that move up some, and because if his head's going to be tilting up that much, it should be up and away from his body a fair amount. So let's just check the anatomy on that. And this is one of those things where you kind of have to do what looks right, because obviously this isn't a real thing. But you adjust it into the point where it looks, where you kind of buy it a little better. So check that. Also, can we, again, develop the design of the character a little bit? I mean, you can even do something like that, which is, he can be a soldier, he can be a regular soldier, and he's not a beast necessarily. You can give him a tabard and some pieces of armor and show that maybe there's even a weapon on the ground that has been looped around with chains, or maybe he's trying to still hold a weapon, but the chains are grabbing that and pulling that down as well. And so it's, he's fighting against that. Do be careful of the values, though. Those value pairs, you don't want to put dark on dark, medium against medium, or light against light. You want to think about it in terms of the three values. You have dark, medium, and lights, and you always want to put one of them against a different one, not of the same. In this case, we've got like dark against dark, so that's not going to show up very well. And I'm going to get more spam calls while I'm trying to talk on stream. So over here, you notice that we have on his reference, lighting reference here, you have like a light on a dark with that character. And most of it, that's what's going on. But then down here, you notice that we have like a light on the leg against a medium in the background. And then elsewhere, we have darks against medium. And obviously, the artist thought a lot about how to adjust it so he always has that value difference between them. And over here, I'm thinking you probably want to shift most of this background into being midtones. I'm going to go for, again, kind of a muted mid-tone on the background so that the dark areas on the upward-facing planes are going to show up. And then the bright areas on the downward-facing planes towards the light sources will show up. Either it'll be light against dark, or dark against light against dark, or it'll be dark against medium, right? I just think that having those midtones back there will probably make it do better. Yeah. Okay. That should do it. That was my main designs here. I think that's a good thought about the angle tilt, Nito, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see him go that way with it. Okay, let's go ahead and go back to Daniel. We just downloaded his. We'll open that up and take a fresh look at it. Okay, yes, I remember seeing this out on the group. Yeah, I remember this being posted. Okay, got some comments. Learned a lot from you and honest feedback from the last challenge. Good. Good to have you back, too. Especially about not needing to go full detail. That was my error last time. I ended up spending too many hours on the smaller details. We all do that at some point. Live and learn, live and learn. Now I'm just working fully zoomed out, so I'm not tempted to work on. That's actually a really good point, and it's a good suggestion just for your workflow, is to not zoom up too much. If you actually stay where you can see most of the image, and you don't zoom up tight, you're not as likely to be focused on over detailing. I'm still open to changing my choice for the concept, but so far this is what the Swatcher Discord liked the most. Thank you. Okay, cool. I've got a good initial read to this. Let's go and I'm going to pull up here so viewers can take a look at some of the other concepts just to see what we're looking at. You got one, looks like it's kind of coming alive. Pages are forming tentacles, grabbing the dude. I think that's a fun concept. I don't think it really follows what this one needs to be, but it's kind of a nice concept, and I could see it working for a piece, just not as effectively as what you've got for this outline. This one's got a good read to it as well. Yeah, definitely a different feel to it, but good initial reaction to it. Then you working through this one, playing with the values, intensity of the lighting, adding some more atmospherics to it, playing around with the colors, and oh, is that from the
That's from Dark Crystal.
Yes, I was trying to think of the name of it. The one with the puppet creatures.
Yes.
Yes,
That's
Dark Crystal.
Awesome show.
That's a great little reference there.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I've just got to just mute my phone. They're gonna keep spamming me if I don't turn this off. All right. Okay, interesting colors going on. All right, I've got some thoughts here, but go ahead and toss me out what some of your observations are. Any initial reactions?
Okay, yes. I can mostly just talk on initial reaction because this is the first time I see on here. But initial reaction would be, I don't know if it's because of how you are capturing your screen, Clint, It's not showing the full big picture, but
Oh, I can move it
it
up.
still feels to me like I know it's not about the character, but the character is super close to the frame. I would
Yeah, I was thinking
nitpicking
that.
just push it not to the middle, just a couple pixels or so towards the middle. Just so that in a way, since it's so close to the frame, it grabs attention because it's like, why is it so close to the frame? Um, Other than that, my reaction is very positive towards the books. I really like the idea of these little wings, and they're almost like little insect creatures. I really like that idea. It creeps me out, but it like I was saying before, it gives them character. It makes them, be a little bit more compelling as characters in the narrative here.
Because
Yeah.
that's not right. I think I need to adjust my screen. It shouldn't be cutting it off right there. I
Oh,
wonder
yeah.
if Streamlabs updated and like reset it or something, because that's, you should be getting more than that.
Yeah, I feel
You
like it's
ought to
zoomed
be
in.
able to see, normally be able to see
Oh,
to
I
about.
can see it now in the what's it called? In the stream. Since there's a little bit of lag,
Oh,
I can see it the full picture now.
and
But
right,
but yeah,
Streamlabs is trying to be a pain
and
here.
and yeah, again, another reaction now that I'm looking at it, I like the that you're going for a more warmer color scheme. I don't know if the out of the three ones that you have at the top, I really like the third one just because it's the contrast between the bluish sort of more magic light and the more man-made warm light at the top. I would go with something of the sort uh, for color scheme wise.
Okay, this is what I'm thinking. I'm with you. I still think the character is too close to that edge over there. They need to be moved. Also, we're getting a tangent of the end of this book to their foot. They're like
Yeah.
exactly there. So I'm going to do a quick repositioning. I'm going to just get this dude and the stuff around him real quick. Let's copy and do that. Go ahead and make some overlap between him and that book. And we'll just delete that out there. I really do like the design of the books. I think that's a great choice with giving them like the legs and little spiky bits. I think that's really fun. And I think we need something else over here in order to take us out of that corner. We need like a book or something here. Just once we move this. I think you have a bookcase or something over there. And we also need something more significant for the person to be looking at. They're looking directly up at something, so we might need to get one that's like right here. That's much closer to the character because they seem really freaked out and looking right there. So we might want to put something right there. And then something just kind of blocking this corner out a little bit. You could just have like a stack of books or the end of a chair that's knocked over. Anything like that, just kind of get rid of that corner some. We're losing a lot of information on this guy. And it would be great to get some of that back. So I'm thinking maybe even adding another light source. You have like a little light back there on that one. I think that's okay. You could have some window light or something coming in here. that's catching the sides of these. It doesn't necessarily need to light up the bookcase, but maybe the light's coming in such a way that it'll catch the more foreground elements. Maybe a little bit across the floor there. Maybe just a little bit back there.
Yeah, I like that idea. It almost gives you, like, even if you push it more towards like a blue, like magic sort of light, it can give you the idea of, oh, they're coming from some sort of portal or something
Yeah.
that's spawning them or casting the magic. Yeah, and it does nice contrast as well. Also, Anna's in the chat and she said that she also really liked the 3 different compositions that they had.
Oh yeah, they're all good concepts.
Yeah.
Just this one seemed the most developed, and I think it's a really nice scene. Although, if Daniel wants to do the other ones, you know, just for images to fill out portfolio and stuff, those are also excellent. They read quite well. So yeah, I'm thinking we almost need another light source back there just to help pop out some major information that we're not really getting. And yeah, I've got a good response to this. You could even think about having some edge light kind of coming down here that we don't lose too much of the character as well. Just making sure that reads. But yeah, largely successful. I'm going ahead and move it up, move on. Okay, Holkeem. I know I still destroyed that, but
It's I believe he also told me, I believe it's Joachim.
Joachim.
Joachim, yes, I think. Hopefully I remember correctly.
Who also goes by Bob, which who knows why, but yeah. Hey Clint, this is a point I have come to in my process. I slowed down and I'm still in the sketch mode. I like the pose and the composition of the image, but I still haven't decided what the landscape or light should be. I feel like I want to get that down. Did I already make notes on this? Remember. Okay. So, I like the direction. We've got him, I feel like he's charging, he's running. And he's looking back over. These things are starting to grab him. It's grabbing his attention. And chains are coming up. This is one I think that we could probably use a more tilted Dutch angle to it. Having the really flat ground is just sort of uninteresting. Like, even if we look at this one, we see that he used that angle to it to offset the angle of the character. So in this one, he's leaning that way. We could probably get this to start leaning the other way. And that would be more exciting, more interesting to see. And I feel like his face is maybe getting a little long. Not really the biggest thing to talk about, but getting more of yeah, because we've got that turning up. I still don't think that's going to turn up. I think that still is. Like it needs to be blunted off or something. So check the anatomy on that. That's not the most important thing. It's just kind of catching me there. We're getting a lot of perspective change, like right here on this leg, and the sense of the chains coming up. But that doesn't really hold for the rest of the body. Like, the head is still really big compared to the body, and if that perspective continued, the head would be more like 3/4 or half that size. So we've got to make sure that that's going to stay consistent. Either it's going to be normal or it's going to be highly perspectivized, and all that head is going to be smaller. I'm trying to make that change. This is kind of what we get. Something more in, maybe in that vein. Let's also see that back arm a little bit. You usually don't want it so that an entire limb or arm is hidden by the silhouette of the body. In this case, the entire other arm exists somewhere behind there, and it just makes it look like this thing is kind of floating in the air. So I would consider either moving it so that you can see that hand out here holding it, or you make this arm come something like that, and you move the item being that direction, so that we can feel where that other arm is. Or you can have move that spear shape and have that other arm getting pulled back because you've got like chains on it and he's trying to fight against it. Or you can have it coming down and he's got his arm pulled up, and again you've got like chains trying to pull that arm down, and he's pulling against it like that. What was your thoughts here? Would you be looking to make any adjustments?
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying in the changes, and showing that extra arm does help sort of clarify a little bit more of the pose. My thoughts on this were that uh I think that scenery-wise, like background-wise, I think the idea that you had at the top is cool, sort of having him emerge from some sort of dungeon corridor or something like that, and
Mm-hmm.
he's being trapped as he's running away or something. I think that would be more interesting as an idea to explore, just background-wise. And on that note would be that, and this might be something to just think about more for the final version, is that these chains sort of, you're drawing them as if they're erupting from the ground and they're catching him as he's turning or what have you. I think that having some sort of cracks or debris that's jumping up as these chains are erupting
Mm-hmm.
from the ground could help you with just more motion and just to filling up a little bit more space in the ground. I
Yeah,
also
and he
like the
could be kicking
idea
up some
of,
stuff from his running too. Assuming he's pushing
yeah,
off pretty hard.
yeah, it could help sort of with the motion of what's happening in the moment. I think you included a little, I assume it's like the spellcaster at the end of the corridor. I think that could work as a fun idea to explore as well. I don't know if he would be that tiny at the bottom, at the in the corridor, like at the top, but just exploring that could help also. And just quickly as a last note, you mentioned in your comment that you're having trouble with sort of values. You're at the value stage, and you might leave it as that without colors for the final. I think that's fine, isn't it?
Yeah,
Um, just
yeah.
to have it like that. Yeah,
I mean, not everybody's used to doing full scenes, and you do what speed you need to do for the challenges. I'm not
yeah,
going to give you a hard time. I'd rather see a well-developed black and white image than a really rushed kind of mediocre job at everything else. So I'm kind of looking at these changes, and the thing to keep in mind with the composition and the environment is that they exist to support the subject. So
yes,
what we got to think about is what is the composition? What is the compositional pattern we're working with? In this case, it's really kind of a radiating line slash triangle. So let's take a look at it. We've got, and you need to adjust the chains probably so that they mimic this better. We've got this dynamic going on. We've got this. So all of these things are kind of radiating off of this angle, and you've got this shape going on, and that means that the rest of the environment really needs to support that, and that can do it by either continuing the same pattern. Let's use a different color on a different layer, which means that we either need the elements in the background to continue this sort of radiating pattern based on the head, or we need it to do something that is contrasting to that. In this case, like we have on the reference image, these very plumb lines with the pillars back there and the very clear silhouette, and he is the thing that bucks against that. He's the thing that doesn't follow that at all. So we could do it where the environment, again, does that same sort of thing, and you want to put it at a counter angle. You've got like the sun here. That's not even a bad idea, is to use a kind of target pattern so that all the stuff in the background follows this sort of pattern, and he follows the radiating kind of triangular pattern. And that means that you could have him in the bottom of some sort of goalie that has this curved crescent to it, almost like he's in the bottom of a crater. You know, I'm almost feeling like that. And you can have like multiple levels to the crater coming up. And then at the top, what do you have? Maybe just a line of trees. So that basically the top of the tree line follows that same pattern across there. All right, so you got like trees coming across up here. Then you could, just put, put like your sun up there, but that maybe you have some clouds, again, following that spherical kind of target pattern, breaking up the shape of the sun so it's not a perfect circle. Then you can just have these, like kind of these crater lines of the little ravines and stuff. Same thing that you see in like your Grand Canyon image there, but obviously not to that scale. But those same sort of patterns can be used to be pointing down to your character. And so in this way, you've got the environment being used to support the character, and that environment's placement of its subjects is based on the very simple kind of like geometric compositional pattern that you develop. So, okay, well, I'm going to wrap it up there on that one.
Yeah, I was gonna say, just like throwing it out there, you could also use that and make it like an arena, like a
Yes.
fighter arena. But that could maybe be a little bit more complicated because you have all these spectators to worry about. But I don't know. You could try that out too.
Okay, this one is up by Neil. Neil? No, I don't see it with the extra E.
I think it's Nelle,
Nelle?
right? Is it Nelle Klumpe? I'm not so sure.
Yeah, let us know. That's probably right. However, I don't say it. It's probably the right way to say it.
Oh no.
Now, it's their first time, so I didn't recognize the name. That makes sense. Why? Welcome to the challenge. Had a hard time deciding on the composition of values and color scheme. I still think there could be better options. I'm not sure which. Asked fellow artists. They thought this one was good. Or what to change. What left me a bit confused and unsure at the end. Yeah, you're running the same thing that we all do, which is there's usually multiple viable ways to light and color something. And so at some point, you just got to pick one that works and go with it. A good positive reaction, initial reaction to this. You're using multiple characters. Obviously, the environment's coming through, but that main character is right up here in the front. So we're getting a good expression. Very clear what's happening with the interaction with the book and the character there. And it looks like, let me go ahead and pull up on some of the concepts up here that people could take a look at that. Same basic idea, you're just changing up kind of where they're posed, what position they're in. Getting a lot of character with the book movements in the background. I like seeing that. Value studies, not wholly different. Kind of adjusting the levels rather than necessarily moving the lighting, but I think it works with that light in the background. Okay, from the window. All right, what was some of my thoughts here? One of my first thoughts is to really help the action of the scene. Again, I think the Dutch angle is a good one for this. So I would be doing more like that. I did that earlier before stream. Just giving that tilt to it. And then I'm also moving his eyes. So it looks like he's looking upwards right now. He's looking up more towards his hand and not really to the book. So I adjusted that so that he's looking more at his book for that interaction to be working a little better. And we've got that. What else? Oh yeah, I'd be thinking about adding more books. You've got quite a few papers in the background, but let's see about actually getting some more books coming in. This is another one where we probably want to have this character looking at a specific object, not just kind of vaguely across the scene. So that's why I'd be putting another one somewhere around there. And for this, possibly even making this book here that's attacking him even bigger. Yeah. Okay, what was your thoughts here? Any particular suggestions, Nito?
Yeah, again, like you said, first reaction I was quite impressed with it. I really like sort of all the action, and you're really telling sort of this
Mm-hmm.
story. It really comes across as like this chaos is ensuing in this library, and everybody's just losing their minds. I really like that. One thing that I don't know if it's a problem or not, it's just what I noticed, is the character in the foreground sort of he's at a nice pose, but his chest area is just pointing at us. It's just and
Mm-hmm.
it can be tricky because from personal experience, having something like point at you directly can be hard to get the form across and sort of uh, selling that it's a 3D object. So I would just say as you go forward, just sort of pay attention, extra attention to that, so that it doesn't fall flat on us. Um, Other than that, yeah, no, it was a really positive reaction. I really like the flow of the books. The character in the background especially is just when you flow through the scene, you get to the character in the background, you're like, "Oh, poor person, whoever that is. I feel for them." Um I think that out of the three color compositions you have, this one is really nice. The green and the red give a really nice contrast between the two characters.
Yeah.
Um and oh, I would just pay attention to the hair of the character in the foreground, for it to not just and this is a thing about just rendering, just to pay attention to, give it a little bit more texture if you need to, just so it doesn't read as like a cap or a
Mm-hmm.
hat. But yeah, again, those are just nitpicky things that when it comes to rendering, you can easily solve with time. So
No, they've made a really good choice in that they have that bright background, which is kind of
yeah,
overexposing all that, and that's nice. But they've also kept enough of the kind of fill light here on this character that even though they're in shadow, we're not actually just losing a bunch of stuff to a black shadow. And same thing with this character, like she's in shadow, but it's also there's enough fill light that again nothing's being lost. So this is really a setup that I like to use myself a lot, and you see it used in a lot of cards, which is the medium bright background with the bright edge light, which allows you to go into a core shadow that goes into a shadow, but the shadow is still in midtones. And the same sort of thing is being used over here as well. Bright background, and then you have kind of like the dark shadow, and then it goes into a medium shadow that has a fill light. And it just balances things out really well. I'm thinking we probably need some references for the folds in this area. Those look a little wonky for me. I imagine that you're going to look that up. You're probably going to get that solved. But that would just be one of them I would be looking to change. I feel like there's probably going to be a little extra fabric or something at the bottom of that, and that's going to just fold a little differently. Anyway, check on that. And anytime that somebody's shoulders bunched up like this, like he has with his hand raised, you're probably going to get a bunch of folds up here and on this side as well. This is going to have to buckle due to the fact that you've minimized the space there. Some of these pages, if these are free-floating pages, which I'm okay with if you have a bunch of just free-floating pages, if they're not just all books, then some of those pages, if the light is just coming through them, can actually get really bright, backlit white paper. So you might want to think about that. Instead of just making them all books, you could actually let a number of these get bright in the shadows, so you kind of transition from light against the dark until when the paper gets in front of the actual window, then they get dark over the light. And you have this nice transition, and you get kind of a volumetric feel of the lighting in the scene. Something along that lines.
Nelly's in the chat, and they say that these pages that you're seeing, they're supposed to be books and pages. They just haven't gotten around to rendering them out yet, so that's good to know.
Yeah, I would actually do a mix between the two.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think I'm almost curious about her lower body. I almost want her like she's moving. I feel like she's static right now and she's just leaning over. I'm curious if we couldn't get her to look like she's turning more, because she's turning her head, and I feel like that can mean that she's turning her upper body, if she's turning around. But it looks like we'd almost need to move it so that her lower body would be turned even more, so that you can get that twist to her whole body as she's going. That would be a small thing. It's just a little tweak, so it looks like she's turning around and not just bending over some. It's kind of small. Somebody mentioned back here, they're mimic books, book mimics. Hisham, I like that idea too. Yeah, you could just make them like there's a certain number of the books in the library that are mimics, as you would normally have with like a treasure chest mimic. And those are the ones that come out to attack the people that aren't supposed to be in there, because everybody else would know which ones they are, right? And yeah, if you want to treat it that way and actually turn some of them into more monstrous types, I'm okay with that. That's kind of cool too. I think, is there anything else? Yeah, we might want to do like a simple thing, like everything in the background has a tendency to be more blue, cooler with that light source. Oh, that's saturation. Hang on, wrong one. And just simplify it. There can be a lot of stuff going on in this scene, and we don't necessarily need to be completely realistic. It's probably going to be better if there's a commonality of all the colors back there, and then there would be more commonality of warmer tones in the foreground. So whatever the fill light is on these foreground characters, maybe it's a slightly different tone, which when it's big seems like a little too much, but when you get it little, it just reads better on a card that way. Obviously, that's an oversimplification, but expressions are going well. I like the gestures of the body and all the rest of that. Okay, moving on to Nicholas. Let's take a look at Nicholas's work here. Finding a pose that looked like what I wanted was hard. Did not find anything closer than this and had to improvise. I intend to put armor and clothing on the Minotaur, but I need to figure out the final pose. Yes, that would be the first thing. I'm pretty up with the overall composition, how it reads a small size, but I really like to get it more dramatic. Looking forward to the review. Okay. This one, I like the read of the blue chains. I do feel like you've probably rushed through the concepts, trying to get too much done before you sent it in. I'm going to suggest we actually go back to the concepts and do a little more work before you commit to the values and start working on the colors. We need to make sure that's stronger, so don't push ahead until we've got that solidified better. And that's okay. That's okay. So you just do what we need to do at this point. This one isn't giving me quite the right read. Because I can't really tell. I feel honestly more like he's falling. It's giving me more of the impression that like he's falling down some sort of cliff. And he feels weightless, rather than he's fighting against these chains. Actually, I have a much more positive feeling to the composition one. Did you take a look at that? Did you have a similar impression, Nito?
Yes, I I actually have in my notes that out of the compositions, I like composition one because it shows him sort of struggling against
Yeah.
it. But that being said, if you really want to go with the composition three, the one that you're doing, I think it would be fun to maybe you would want to zoom in a little bit on the character so that but it's again it's tricky because you don't want the character to be the focus but
Mm-hmm.
perhaps if you zoom in ever so slightly on the character more you can focus on how these chains are wrapping around and how he's you could sort of think of the puzzle a little bit more to make it like he's struggling um and if you really, again, if you're going to go for that composition three, because I mean, no one can stop you. You make your own choices. Um, I would just say maybe put a little bit more attention to the chains, make them feel a little bit more strong and hefty. Maybe having them be bigger chain links so that they feel like they're a little bit stronger in that sense. Like they cannot break if they're
Mm-hmm.
wrapping around this character.
Yeah, you could probably
Um,
triple the thickness of those
yeah,
chains. Yeah.
it would make them feel more powerful and yeah again like they wouldn't break and this minotaur is doomed in a way um but yeah I mean that could help save this composition a little bit more um in terms of the action and if you really want to go for that one. Um, I looked at that some of your references were like football. I think that's football players that they're like tackling or
Yeah.
doing some sort of football move.
American.
That's a good idea to sort of look at figures in motion. I mean, if you really would want to go for that. But I would say, I mean, if you're on the topic of football, maybe look at pictures of a football player being tackled and he's struggling to get up
Yes.
and do something. That could be a fun thing to explore, really. I mean, you have it, it's part of the sport. And I mean,
Or go
that could
look
work.
at the strongman competition.
Yeah,
Those are really powerfully built dudes who are
yeah,
moving really heavy things, and you could get some similar poses and strain going on with that.
yeah. And also they do the expressions. They do the
Yeah.
expressions really well. Like you can see them like they're struggling, they're really flexing for it. So that could be good. Also, yeah, Hobbit was mentioning in the chat, the horns are also pointed straight to us, whereas the head is tilted, but more on that the horns. Being a MTG image, I don't know if these are too similar to Nicol Bolas's horns. I don't know if
Yeah.
that would be a concern for if
I
this was
mean,
like an official Magic thing.
it can be more
Um,
like a longhorn if you want to do it that way, so
yeah,
they're nice and broad. That would also keep that off. Or we need to go with more of the ram's horn thing where you've got the loop going on it.
yeah,
Um, yeah,
it could work that way.
something
Yeah,
more
it's
like
just
that.
just just pointing that out. I mean, maybe they would. You would know more, Clint, if they would tell you to change them because they're Nicol Bolas's
Yeah,
horns.
you don't want it to read as Nicol Bolas.
Yeah. And yeah, that's what also in my notes is that when I was looking at the composition 3, but in the different color schemes and whatnot, seeing it so small, it looked like Nicol Bolas to me. Like almost just like the dragon he's floating up is almost kind of like his silhouette. Um,
Or you
but
can give it more like moose
yeah.
horns if you want it to have more of the big fin
Yeah.
shape on it, and just play around with something a little different. Oh, that's fine too. But yeah, I think we need to use more of this composition, and then on the chains, we want to keep them so that they have a predictable sort of pattern to them.
Mm,
And probably one of my thoughts is this, and that is if the chain is reaching out to the person, it's going to be more wobbly, right? Because it's like a vine reaching out. But once it gets a hold of them, boom, it pulls taut. And so any of them that's attached to the character, that needs to make it feel like it is just unmovable it is so tight. But then
Yeah.
the ones that are not attached yet, those are the ones that can still be snaky and coming up around the character. Okay. The other thought here was if you used Comp 1, I did a quick mock up. Use Comp 1, threw in the background of your environment reference. And so you could have something like this. I think that works really well. So yeah, that's just the same thing that you had there. I pulled it out just a little bit. I feel like we could get a little more view of the chains and what's going on there. And the same general idea for the background is fine. Obviously, you don't want to use this exact image, but you could use that same sort of pillar, but you probably want to just arrange them in a better arrangement with, what's going on in your scene. And again, with like the horns here, try to find something a little more interesting. Like on this, the water buffalo, I think the water buffalo style horns could work really well for this character. Because they're nice and beefy along the sides, but they don't get too high. So we're not going to be running out of the image with them. And so it's going to be something a bit more like that. And we might have like some of the more of that lower hair and stuff coming down there. That's what I'd be thinking. Chains show up really well there too. And I think the decision actually with some of the lighting, the values here in Comp 1 was already looking good, and that you were keeping that muted, sort of foggy background, and that allowed there to be enough atmosphere to get a nice glow off the chains. That's a good decision. Okay, Olivia is up. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, this one. Okay. Olivia says, I'm struggling with making this piece readable. Okay. Seems pretty readable to me, but the floating rock ground may be too similar to the Buffetar. Oh, I guess you're talking about like values. All right, I'll follow you on that one. Originally intended to have him on floating rocks in space, but thought that was too far. Thanks for all the help. Okay, good initial read to this one. I think this one's coming along really well. This is a good example of that slightly higher angle that we're kind of talking about with the other image. And you were talking about having the higher angle to see the magic ring. And I think that's sort of the angle that we're looking at. And overall, this one's working quite well for me, I think. So, what was your initial read? Positive to this?
Yeah. I mean, to me, this is a positive idea, and I think that just to comment briefly on the idea of readability, maybe it's just a thing of choosing, assigning a value to the different
Mm-hmm.
elements. So let's say just in general, the buffalo, is it a buffalo? I think the minotaur will have one sort of, he's going to be, let's say, the middle value, and then the ground that he's on might be darker so that everything shows up better. Um, but I think Olivia was already looking at that, mentioning that they were blending a little bit. So yeah. First thing that I noticed was that maybe the chains that are going down into the ground are getting too small at the end.
Yes, my
It's
thought as
reading
well.
as if, yeah, it gives me the impression that either these chains are super small or this buffalo character is so big, almost like a giant, that these are getting so small. Um, and I think you could also benefit from what I mentioned earlier about, since these chains are sort of erupting from the ground, you could do some sort of cracks or sort of debris
Mm-hmm.
shooting up as they're going, just to show that they have force to them. Um, Other than that, I like that what you're doing with giving it armor and some sort of just more
Yes.
character to it by by thinking about the costuming. I would just say that again, on the idea of values, differentiating parts of the costume could work by giving, making something more metallic be more contrasty and metallic, and then the
Mm-hmm.
fur be a little bit more matted and whatnot.
I'm almost feeling
Um,
like some sort of black leather or black metal would work
oh,
really
yeah,
well
that
on
could work
him
too.
because his hair is slightly lighter, but you might get a nice kind of cool sheen off of some of the light. But most of it's going to be darker and really help
Yeah,
to bring out that silhouette of the character. Yeah. Just thinking if we could get that silhouette to run a little better, and then perhaps um,
um,
catching some light
yeah.
on
And just
the rock.
last thing, briefly, is that I think that everybody could benefit, just as a point of thought, just to think about, okay, where are these chains coming from, and how is he falling? Is he, standing on the ground, and is he on the ground already, standing up and whatnot? Because you need to think about what the chains are pulling. Like if it's pulling his arm might be going downwards. If he's pulling, like in here, one of the big chains is going sort of against his sort of his neck in a way area and pulling him back,
Mm-hmm.
but then you don't see, like, then you have the foreground leg, he's being pulled another way, but then you're like, oh, where's the other leg? Is he falling
Yeah, I was
backwards?
kind of
Like,
thinking that you might actually want to put that other foot just kind of visible behind his rear, like
yeah,
he's got the other one thrown back a little bit. I think it's supposed to be over here, and I get that, but just for visibility's sake, we might get his tail to come up higher and then make room to put that other foot over there just for clarity's sake and have it something like over there. Um, and I get the idea that this is like a really extreme angle,
yeah,
and that's okay. I think you can get away with that, and that's not a big deal. I do really like the expression that you got out of the character. That is not an easy thing to do with a creature that can't normally express in a human way. So that's a really good job on that, and I think those values and those colors are working quite well. Okay, I did have some thoughts, mainly about the chains. You already said one of them, which was the chains are getting too small. I feel like for as
yeah,
powerful as this guy is, he could just probably snap a chain that size. So, and this goes for a lot of them. These chains are magical. They don't need to be like any reasonable size. I these things could be like chains that anchor a boat, right? It can be massive. And also think about the design of your chain. Don't just use a standard chain brush. I mean, you can use that in order to get you the basic shape to work with. But one is think about how it perspectivizes. And if the chain is coming from somewhere near the camera, the end of it can be really big. And then it foreshortens a lot as it goes down. The other thing is think about the design. There's lots of designs of chain links. So if you use more like a hexagon, you could do that, and they're not as rounded, and they feel like they would be more uncomfortable to have against you because they're angular. And if you would actually look at the end of them, even on a flat view, they're pointed, right? They have a ridge. They're flat angles, and so you could do something like that. Or you could have the chain links that are just rounded, and then they've got the flat sides, right? They're rounded on the ends, and they've got the flat sides. And then some of the chains actually have little spiky bits that come off the sides, like that. And then you have the other links connecting to them. And that could give it a little character too. These little tweaks to the chain could actually make it more interesting than just a standard loop round chain link. You also see some other chains that have the different ones. Like some of them or maybe are round. They're round links. Then they're followed by a longer, flatter, like oval link then it's another round link. And so it works more like that. And so it's an uneven chain link. So these are the sort of things you can play with. Okay, so think about that. This is, I would take out the chains actually in the background because we want that blue to be, or that bluish green to be kind of unique to the character and the chains happening on him. And I'm also thinking, what is the pattern that you're making with these chains? We looked at it a little bit on the other one. It's about using the composition. So compositionally, we've got, let's go and just use yellow so it'll show it better. This and this and this. Okay. Well, it's all kind of facing, I'm almost getting the idea that it's pointing to his eye. And then that's where they're all kind of looking to go. So maybe we have one coming out from behind on the other side, anchoring down. Then on this one feels like it's kind of bucking the system. That it's not taunt, it's just kind of draping down. But like perhaps to get the idea that he's being pulled down, we need other ones that are constantly going, they're all going this way, right? They're going away. And they're all going down, they're trying to pull him down. This one looks like it could be trying to pull him up. So we're thinking about how to use this one maybe to come down and go a different direction, right? Or out that way, something like this. They're trying to keep him from going this direction. But yeah, the floating rocks, I'm in with that sort of idea. I think that's just fine. Consider that the rocks might be a different color. Maybe there's some sort of like obsidian, black obsidian. It could be some sort of crystal. So you can make it a different tone so that it doesn't conflict with his color, right? Yeah. But beautiful piece. I think this one can finish up really, really nicely. But I got to move on, so we'll wrap it up there, Olivia. Patricia is up next. Okay. Patricia says, definitely learned a lot on the last challenge, so I wanted to go again. Well, welcome back. Initially, I had a hard time picking between the sketches. Maybe I should try any of the other two. Still might want to push the concept of the Minotaur's face a lot more, but for now, I'd love to hear what you think. I'll go ahead and pull up on the other concepts so people can take a look at those. We got this one, the character's kind of doing his Superman thing, busting his chest out. And we've got the upward view coming down, which you develop more. And then we've got like the side view, and he's pulling up with his arm. Okay, I guess these are similar. Okay, yeah, value studies then. I've got the value studies. Lit from the top, lit from the sides. Playing around with how much he's being lit by those. Okay. What was your original thought here? Because I know some of the things I'm thinking.
Yeah. Well, just as a just I think it's worth mentioning is that I like how you're trying out these different how it stands out to me from the other images, just the idea of how he's being enveloped by all of these chains. It
Mm-hmm.
feels like it's sort of in the middle of the attack, and some of the chains are wrapped around and the other ones are in process of, and I like that. It shows that emotion. I like that it's a down shot that we really see him struggling looking up. Um, that being said, I don't know if uh it's just because of its concept phase or not. I would just say uh, the horns seem a little bit too sort of thin for me.
Mm-hmm.
For if you want him to feel like powerful and he's this big beast, perhaps thickening the horns up could work, or just thinking about how those could work, designing them a little bit more could help you as well. But that's just nitpicking, I guess. Um, I like that you're doing what I was saying before with the chains erupting from the ground and there's some sort of cracks that are illuminated. But I would say that idea of these cracks in the ground being illuminated and whatnot, I would just expand on that a little bit more. I see it as just like two little dots in the composition of these little cracks that are happening. I would just make it bigger. Um, I would have the cracks sort of going all around the ground. But I guess if you try and do that, that could be a little bit of a problem if they start to, what is this called? If they start to compete too much with the chains.
Hmm.
So I would say go with caution if you're gonna take that into consideration. Yeah, those would be my first comments so far.
I'm sort of torn on this. I think this can work, but you need to take it in a slightly different direction. Because this angle doesn't convey quite as clearly the action that's going on that I think some of the other concepts do. I think the first one gives the easiest, quickest idea of what's happening. But I also think this one can work, but I would go a little differently with it. Um, One of the things we need to do is we need to adjust his arms. Because we actually have the elbow going backwards there. Right? It still has to be going the right way. So if his upper arm's like this, you still have to have that forwards bend to it, and we've got that on both of these. We've got to have a forwards bend to the elbows. But okay, that's not the major thing, but that's one thing I didn't want to forget. And here, I think it has to be, you're conveying it slightly differently. Where, think of it more like somebody drowning in quicksand, where they've almost been completely enveloped and they're screaming as they're about to be completely gone. So think about it like so many. Like you can't hardly see anything but its head left, and it's got like one hand sticking up, right? And there's just so many of these things wrapping around. And you've got a couple of them here in the foreground that are nice and close, and you can really get a view of the chain, right? And maybe there's even like little inscriptions on the chain or something. And so you've got that going on. And it's more like getting completely enclosed and suffocated. And it's that idea rather than necessarily somebody being just kind of bound down by these grappling, almost like grappling vines, right? So I think if you're going to be doing with this angle, it has to be more like this direction. And you could have the hands up there, and maybe he's trying to, maybe with one hand, he's like trying to pull it off of his neck, right? With one, and maybe he's holding two of them with his other hand, and he's just completely failing at fighting against these things, but he's trying, right? He's got like one hand here, and he's at least trying to keep the one off of his neck, and then his arm's getting wrapped up. And the other one, he's got like a hand up, and he's got, you know, three of the chains running through his hand, and he's trying to hold them off of him. That can be really cool. I think that is where the strength of this image is. It's the absolute desperation of something that ought to be really powerful and unstoppable as a minotaur, but he's almost like he's drowning, right? Well, what do you think about that? Not the exact thing that the artist was originally going through, but I think emotionally, that would be a more engaging image than where we see right now, which is kind of like the very beginning of the attack.
Yeah. I know. Actually, now looking at this, I hadn't considered this at the start, but you could really go like far with this one.
Mm-hmm.
And it would use up some of the, yeah, it would cover up some of the things in the background. It would just pull up the, again, like we were saying earlier, it would make the chains sort of the main event
Yeah.
of the illustration, which would really work for the brief, I think.
Yeah.
Um Yeah. And like you said, like having them, some of them so close to the foreground that you can see sort of inscriptions or magic runes or something,
Hmm.
or glowing from the chains could also work really well. Um, yeah, I agree. And then for that one, you would have already a good expression in the character to show
Yes,
that
absolutely.
desperation. Because yeah, I really didn't have much to say about the expression because it's working for
No, the
me.
expression works well. I would completely suggest what you said as well, which is let's give him some really cool horns, get
Yeah.
those horns fatter, and see about giving some twist to it. That's one of the ways that you can really just add more interest to them, is let them twist somehow, and make them so they're not perfectly round. Round is kind of uninteresting, and so you think about it a little more in terms of planes and letting it be a little bigger. It's kind of doing this. Or if you want to just, fantasy it up a little bit, you can have it break off into having multiple points on the end. I mean, something on that line. Something like this. And then that where it becomes more, so, almost halfway into being an antler. Yeah, something like that. So have a little fun with it, but that's my suggestion. If you want to take it that way, I think that's where you're going to get a lot of good life out of that image. Tolner is up next. Tolner, okay. This is I was trying to go for more of a Orient style illustration, and I'm not sure if that doesn't go too far from the Magic card style. Would love to get some tips on the lighting, color, and shape design. Thanks for all the work. Yeah, I think that's within it. And if you're wanting to try that way, that's fine with me. These are more what he's talking about, kind of the Orient style of art, and this one down here as well. So, kind of dynamic colors with the deep reds, the violets. Silhouette of the character is standing out quite well, but the chains aren't. And I think we really got to get more going on with the chains. This feels more like a feature about the character, and that happens to have some chains in it, rather than, again, the spell, the action that is taking place between the character and the chains. I think what you said at the beginning, Nito, was good about the books. You had said, the books are, think of them as a character. And the
Yeah.
same thing here, too, right? The chains are a character. And how is the character of the chains interacting with the character of the Minotaur? Yeah. So I have some thoughts on this. I did a little adjustment, but throw out your thoughts to begin with, if you had anything.
Yeah, I really see what you're going for with the style. I'm familiar because I'm a fan of some of these artists. And I would just say, just as a tip for if we're going for that style, is really manage your detail. Like a
Mm-hmm.
big thing about it is managing your detail, having rest areas. They do that a lot with the backgrounds and with parts of the character, and then just where you want people to look and focus on, there's what you're going for, your details and your little textures. Like you can see it in the armor. They
Yeah.
have really, no, I don't want to say plain looking, but they have rest areas that you can clearly see, and then they break up into smaller and smaller shapes. So it's all about that. I think that style is one of the big
And you also
characteristics.
have to really admire the black and white work,
Yeah,
because
their
the
values are insane.
really good value use,
Yeah.
as well as their saturation use. Like you notice on this top one with the lion dude
It,
ish. I don't
it's
know what he is.
yeah, it's a
Anyway,
character from Guild Wars.
okay. Uh, Most of it is setting right there in the neutrals. It's
Yeah.
browns, it's grays, it's dull greens, mossy greens. And then the highest saturation comes from that yellow, reds, and oranges. And a similar thing going on the one lower than that. Again, everything sets in the neutrals of grays and dull browns and beiges except for the blades. And the blades have the pop of reds, the eyes has the pop of violets, and that's something we have to watch for over here, because we actually have the inverse. You've got the environment way more colored than the
Yeah.
character. I guess you're going more like the one over here, but I don't think that you have the lighting to uphold it. because you've got the really colored background with the character with the wings, and then you have like the clear silhouette with the light coming down. I mean, you can get that to work. I just think it's probably going to work better for you if you follow the one over here so that the background is duller and the character has more contrast and the character, even the character itself needs to be fairly dull because the color that you have on this one works because everything is dull except for the fire. For yours, Tolner, everything needs to be dull except for the chains.
I
The
agree.
chains are going to have the color. The character themselves won't really have much color on them. They'll just simply have a little more contrast than the background. Yeah. So watch that. Then I implemented some of that, going more like this. So I moved him up so that we could get more chains, so that we could indicate that better. Then running a vibrance just to kill down some of the color real quick. A linear dodge to indicate kind of where the chains could be. And just a little paint out of the other ones. So this is, again, kind of going back to what is the pattern that chains are following. We don't really need ones going off that direction. That's not going to follow things too much. So everything is just kind of pointing up like this. Right? So everything's getting the indication that it's trying to bring him down. Right? And so I don't know why it won't let me go backwards and not have that. Okay. And then some of them that are still wrapping around can be floating off the body a little bit. But the ones that have latched on good are already super tight. And we're adding more of them. And we're making them brighter. And they also look brighter because we've toned down the vibrancy of everything else. How does that register with you, Nito?
Yeah, I think that it's a good change because it brings back again attention to the chains. They're the main event. It's the main
Mm-hmm.
action that you want for this card specifically. And I think that specifically on that, the topic of the chains, you're really, like Clint said, you're really pushing saturation and sort of the accent color or what have you will be
Yeah.
in these chains. And I think just again, going back to the style that you want to go for, Toldner, is use and apply that style also to the chains, meaning give the chains some sort of design element.
Mm-hmm.
Have them be like there could be this very like basic chain as the base for it. Like they have for the armors, they have very basic armors for the base of them. I'm saying base too much, but anyway, and then over top of that, you add these little shapes and design details that sell it because if you're gonna go for that style, apply it to everything. You know, don't just have like Clint was saying earlier. Don't just use the chain brush. You know, and if you haven't watched before in the stream, rewind because Clint gave of some ideas of like different designs for the chains. So perhaps having the spiky bits on there could help you with sort of translating them into this style as well. Yeah, and just again, personal, this is my extra little 2 cents, not even 5 cents. It would be that add some fur to it. Add some fur blowing in the wind or something. The top of the head. I mean, maybe your
Oh,
minotaur
you're
doesn't
talking about the
have fur.
Minotaur, like furry chains.
Yeah, no,
I
no,
don't
no.
know.
I'm saying, look at these characters like Ritlock from Guild Wars 2. You have it there. That's a Rangia painting.
Yeah.
He gets a lot of that idea of detail across as well in the fur of this character. So perhaps you could do something like at the top of his skull, just have just a little bit, just to have the silhouette broken up a little bit by that instead of it being super clean in that sense. Um, but yeah, those are my comments.
I don't think you should do this with this expression, but there we go.
Yeah, that's perfect for the style. Yes.
Yeah. I do like the idea of a weapon. I thought maybe he has some sort of warhammer. I would play that up. A little too much angle there and motion blur. But if we want to throw a warhammer in there, I think that fills the space in really nicely, and it makes him feel like much more of a warrior, giving him something to work with there. I do like the indication of like some of the swirl to the cloak that I have the feeling that he's spinning around because like these things have maybe come up behind him and he's turning to look at them. And so I played that up. I think that's a nice sense of flow there. So, yeah, you're going in a great direction with it. I'd love to see how you pull off that sort of style. And yeah, of course, this goes to everybody as well, which is put your progress out in the group. A lot of great artists out there to give you some feedback. People love to give you feedback for like multiple versions. Hey, I'm thinking about this one or this one. Which one do you guys think is better? And people love giving opinions. So
Yeah, yeah. Just really quick, Tolner's in the chat. He said, "Do you think I could keep it working somehow?" Wait, do you think? He's just asking if he could keep the colors in the character and have it work. I'd say yes, but just don't have them so saturated that they compete with the chain.
yeah, if you want to have a very grayed out background, a very muted background, and then have some colors in the character, you can have some colors in the character, but make sure that it probably stays away from the colors of the chain. You want to have the dichotomy between the chains are, cool, and then whatever colors are in him are going to be warm. Uh, but you can give him color, but try to keep down any of the amount of glow that you would have to compete against the chains. Yeah. Okay, so this one was by Tim Thomas. Said I'm very unsure about the color palette and what to do for the background. I dread doing environments. Any tips or advice on how to approach those would be super helpful. I think the first thing we've got to note here is that we're getting too close to the character. Where this is far more about the Minotaur as a character than it is about the spell that's happening. One of the things I had mentioned in your guide images is a full figure of Minotaur, and right now we're just past head and shoulders. So we've got to really pull out more. Your composition too is actually way closer to something that would probably work as far as the cropping. So let's make sure that we're coming back towards that. Even it looks like you did maybe some sort of 3D mock-up or something down here with your pose reference. Even that's a lot closer as well. Either one of those is going to give us a better context for what is happening in the scene. We want to just make sure that it's not about the specific character, but again, the chains are actually the thing. Because in the game, the chains are the thing that the player is actually implementing. That's their action. They're not playing the Minotaur. The Minotaur is just standing in for generic character of the enemy. So we don't want it to be about the Minotaur. We want it to be about the chains affecting the Minotaur. And for that, we got to really zoom out. So keeping that in mind, there's not that much we can say necessarily about the character. I like the horns. I think the ratio of the head to the body looks good. I think you're working out the anatomy, the musculature is looking pretty good. But I'm more concerned about, at this point, the composition and conveying the concept here. And so I'm going to be taking a look at some of these other like compositional ideas. What was your thoughts with this one? Do you have a similar feedback, or how were you thinking to approach this?
Yes, my first it was you said it very nicely there. It's not a portrait that
Mm-hmm.
the brief was looking for. It was looking for the full figure, or I guess as much as a figure you could show. I mean, if on composition 2 it's not completely because one of the legs is getting cut off, but you're getting the gist of it with composition 2, I think.
Yeah.
Um yeah, I like that you're exploring these different ideas. That's credit to you because on the third composition there's this idea of these sort of raining from the sky, I think, which we haven't seen yet, I think,
Mm-hmm.
on the other thing. So that's good to just go out there and explore these different ways. It shows you're thinking about this concept. So um yeah, it's just if I had to pick on one of the three, I would go with composition 2 in a way, just because it's showing this character a lot more. But I would, I don't know, perhaps try and show a little bit more of these chains coming up.
Yeah.
Maybe have some on the foreground, like pointing at the character a little bit more. Um, yeah, I think that would be your best bet so far.
Yeah, with the composition too, one of the things we want to be careful of is right now it could read as he is summoning the chains.
Oh, yeah.
And the way that they're kind of looping out from him, I feel like almost that he may be making them. And I think we have to have more of them that are reaching to him. Because right now it almost looks like they're all originating from him. So we need some that are headed towards him. And the ones coming over his shoulder, again, like we can't see where they're coming from. So we assume that he is the originator of them. And also, we can help explain it with his expression. If he seems angry about it, if he seems annoyed about it, then it helps us understand that he's not the one controlling them. So yeah, let's actually back up to composition 2 and see about having the chains coming up. Again, implementing what you said earlier, Nito, which is we can throw some dirt up to show these things have just very quickly erupted out of the ground. And there's some dirt clumps flying up here. We've got his head like maybe twisted over to one side as he's kind of yelling. He's not in perfect control of what's happening. Then you've got the other chains that are coming up, to get him, and not just being right there around him. Probably a little less. Another aspect of it, of why it looks like he's summoning them, is because they're so symmetrical. You've got the perfect X pattern across the chest, exactly the same spot on each arm, completely symmetrical with it going over each shoulder. So if we make it more random, I think it is going to register better as being an uneven attack against him. But this composition works. The values are actually working pretty good on this as well. The background's staying right there in the midtones, which is giving you that great medium against dark with the character, or medium against light with the chains. So that's working well. Yeah, I just think maybe you overthought it a little bit. I've done that before where I've had some idea, I second guessed myself, and ended up, going a different direction with it when I should have stuck with an earlier, stronger concept. So let's just go back to concept 2 with this one, Tim. And there's strength in that. That'll work for you. So let's just grab some of the information that you've already made here. You can just translate over. You should probably be able to move some of that anatomy, some of the design of the character over to concept 2. And you should be good. Your color schemes are all working for me down here as well. They're very simple, but they work, especially for a small card size. And I'm thinking 2 or 3 works better than 1. I feel like the yellow is perhaps too strong in 1. But 2 and 3 are working pretty well. Yeah. Okay, did we have another one? Yeah, we got one left. Tyler Vell is up last. Yeah, we're going to get just past 4. Okay, that's good. 4 p.m., I mean. Okay, geez, where did time go? Mostly looking for feedback with the pose, proportions, and placement of chains. Okay, good read on this one. I think this is a strong concept, Tyler. And it's, I think it's well posed. A lot of good stuff going on here. I guess you got a good reference photo of the pose, combining that with the ram. Good expression with the ram face. So like on the expression, looking at how the face crunches, getting those folds really help it to read better. The way that the nose would wrinkle up in that expression, the wrinkles around the eyes, those read well. And generally the idea works. I feel like this is another one of those places where we could probably double or triple the strength of the chains, and it would look good. What's your thought there, Dito?
Yeah, it's just my note was just the chains again. I don't know why, but it feels like he could just lift his arms and he
Mm-hmm.
could lift, the chains with him and that could be it for the attacker. But yeah, I'd say that, and just as a note, it's just, and this happens all the time, is when you're drawing horns on a character and the face is on three-quarter perspective, you really need to think about where the horns are coming from, like where they're inserting into the skull of the character.
Yeah, I was
Um,
looking at that.
yeah, a good tip that I use is just find the center line for the face, which then could help you plot out where these two horns are coming out of. Because right now, the one on the far, I guess on the left for us, it looks like it's coming out of the middle of his forehead. So it's just a quick thing of just finding the center line, and all you have to do is just select that and move it to the side because you already drew it pretty nicely. It's just seeing where it's inserting. And another tip is, if you're having trouble with that specific area, you could just have hair coming out of it, like between the two horns, so it's overlapping that horn in the background.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
Mohawk Ram
yeah,
Minotaur.
it could
Yeah.
it could help as well, and it could give you a fun, again, like I said with Tolner, a fun silhouette for your character, just breaking it up and making him look, because he already has this like spiky sort of uh all over the place sort of beard going on. You could have the same in the sort of echo that up in the hair at the top, and that could work nicely in that sense. Um yeah, another just quick pointer would be, again with the horns, is that they look really cool. I would just say maybe give them a little bit more character by having, I don't know, some scratches on them. That's more just
Oh,
about the
sorry.
rendering. Like having them be sort of,
Yeah,
I
you could
don't
have
know, a little
chips
bit
in them
more,
and
yeah, chips and such,
yeah.
yeah. And then I don't know if you wanted to put anything on them, like maybe you can say these minotaurs, they decorate them or they put war paint on. I think that could also help just generally with your character, because he just reads like, it may just be because it's the concept face, but it's just like he's all the same color, even his
Mm-hmm.
clothing. So yeah, maybe just having some sort of like war paint in his chest or something, or yeah, Kong was saying sort of
Yeah, I think
tattoos
war
or
paints
something
could
could work.
really work well. If you don't want to do the whole clothes armor thing,
Yeah,
war paint can go a long way to giving
yeah,
you at least some sort of interest, a
yeah,
pattern on it. Some
yeah.
sort of
I agree.
geometric lines and stuff is fine.
Um, and yeah, just I don't know. It depends because to each person, their minotaurs are different. I would just say think about it if he has a tail or not, and if he
Mm.
does, do you want to show
Mm-hmm.
it sort of swooping, sort of a little bit of motion to it? That could work as well to read sort of how he's turning and trying to get up and struggle. Um,
And we got
and
quite a
yeah,
bit of foreshortening on the foreground on the
yeah,
character. So this is another one where that chain link coming out of the ground. Again, let's see that busted dirt
yeah,
up here and that broken ground. And I'm almost feeling like we could even show like a cratering around his foot because he's pushing so hard against the ground that
yeah,
he's actually cratering it in with the force. And this initial chain coming out of the ground is going to look really big with that foreshortening. And then it's going to get smaller. But we still need to be about twice the size when it gets to the character. So it's
yeah.
somewhere along that lines. Um,
I agree.
and okay, as far as like lighting and values, we probably want to drop the vibrancy of that red in the background because it's actually overpowering the blue. And we want that glow off of the chains, which means that we're probably going to again shift this to being a little bit darker and a little bit more muted on the background. so that that chain has something to glow against. These are magic chains. They're not just blue metal chains. So we can do that. And then if you want to add, keep your atmosphere, I do like the atmosphere there. Then the blue chains, they can have like the outside of the chains being blue, and then the inside of the chain, like the shape can be almost white, right? And so you got that really good glow to it. Just look at Chris Varon, I think, did that on his Minotaur. That you have the range of color that it has that really saturated glow right around the chain link, and
right.
You can get really good colors right around there. But usually the direct inside of it goes from like super saturation to white on the inside of the shape. Yeah, so something along that lines, and then those will pop really well. And if you need to, just add a secondary light. Like you have here, you have that bright light kind of coming down on the top of the character. And you can do the same thing. If the background's too muted and you just need to throw an extra light over the top of the character in order for some of the information to stand out and not get lost, then just add another light to it. And it can be from the top. You could have a side light coming down the character over here if you need one over on that side. Whatever will help tell some of that information. But on the whole, I think the composition works. Let's just watch those chains. And we probably want to give some of the chains that have not reached him yet. Maybe we have a couple of them that are still coming up. And they're doing something more like this. And they're reaching up to him. And I almost want to see one or two that have grabbed like his horns or are looping around his neck. A little more suffocating. Yeah. Okay, any last thoughts on that before we wrap it up?
Yeah, just last thoughts in general, because I think this can apply to everybody. It's just when you're doing these kinds of scenes, especially they're in motion, it's sort of in the middle of an action. I think just something to never forget is that uh, both the character, and I said this last week with the water elemental, is like the character is there, but the character is taking part of the scene within the background. Like the character and the background are together in the same universe. And so
Mm-hmm.
they have an impact on each other. That's what I kept saying about the debris and these chains
Yeah.
erupting and whatnot is you need to connect them in some way. It's always good to sort of take time to find out how to connect them, how to really make it feel like a cohesive scene. And I think that can apply to everybody's, even the libraries as well. It's just yeah, and you can see it on the references as well. It's just that's really something that like I think levels up your illustrations. It's just thinking about okay, not just the character and the background separately. It's just they're interacting
Yeah,
in some way.
exactly. How do they affect each other?
Yeah.
And the one I just wrote up here, dust. Him walking kicked up a little dust that creates that overlapping. And it's a really good observation. It's one of those things that make the universe feel believable.
Yeah.
And having the dirt flying, and things like cast shadows from one object, the character onto the environment. That's another thing too. And does some of the light, you have a little bit of that here, Tyler, and you might even want to push it further, which is having kind of that blue light actually affecting more of the underlight on the characters, so that the top of it could be almost silhouetted, but the bottom downward facing planes were all getting more of that blue chain light. And that could work really well. Kind of a dynamic thing going on there.
Oh, I see it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so remember, if you want to get in on this challenge and tackle these concepts, at least at the beginning of the stream, there were 4 tickets remaining. Gumroad.com/swatches. And you can pick up one of those. It's $25. You get 2 feedback. Now, in 2 weeks, we'll be taking a look at the final versions of these, but next week will be Group 2. If you have just joined the the Swatches channel or watching the stream, whatever, we do have a very active Discord. A bunch of people out there, a lot of different rooms. You can get feedback. You can just share images if you don't want feedback. Resource sharing. There is an art club out there doing just a lot of studies. They're basically like art school studies to improve. And Anna does a lot of work with that. Puts together lots of reference images. She puts her exercises out there. If you have questions, lots of people can help you find the information that you're looking for. So if you don't have an art community, head out there. A lot of good stuff out there. We do have the Facebook group. It's not quite as active now. I think most of the people have moved over to the Discord. It just handles a wider number of people a lot easier. But otherwise, a bunch more, videos out on the channel. Oh, I did notice that our the last video, not the live stream, but how your brain sabotages your art. That video just passed 50,000 views, which is awesome. That's really, really good for this channel. And I know it's because people shared it and liked it and commented. Normally, honestly, it never gets that high unless you guys do that stuff. I don't have enough subs to get that number of people. So thank you. Thank you for making it more successful. I think it's brought a lot of people to the channel that hadn't seen it before. And I'm getting feedback from people hearing that it really has helped them. And that's great to hear. So it's great. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up there. I got to jump over to some other stuff, but I appreciate you making the time to hang out with me. Nito, thank you to you for coming over and being a guest with me today.
Yes, no worries. Anytime. As I said last week, I'll say it again. It's an honor to even be considered to be here, so thank you.
All right, well, we will see about next week. I don't know if Nito will be here or whether Anna will be back from her trip, but hopefully we'll have somebody. And we'll see you again next week. So until then,
Awesome.
keep drawing.